Let's talk mega trends, and let's have a look here at sort of like, what do you think are those major forces that you think are going to have the greatest influence on family enterprise strategies? And I'd love to hear from Robyn, from you first, like from an Australian perspective, from your end of the world. What do you feel is going to have the greatest impact on family enterprises going forward?
I think in Australia at the moment, we're seeing three probably key pressures on family businesses. First one, of which I think I understand to be fairly global in its nature, is the labour attraction and retention. The second one would be just digitisation of business. And I think COVID's really accelerated that with a lot of our family businesses. But the piece that probably hasn't kept pace is the upskilling and the training of, I guess, the entire staff and bringing them along on that digitisation journey. That can be quite a challenge as well. And then probably the third one would be cyber. We've had a couple of really significant cyber attacks in Australia.
I think another trend that we see is succession and transfers of wealth to the next generation. I think over the next decade or so, there's going to be a huge amount of wealth that transfers. And that brings with it its own set of challenges, the importance of governance structures, tax implications, and to, pass that control on effectively.
Echo what Robyn has mentioned. These are the factors that present the challenges to the business level. But the other point that I would make, which is very similar to what Camilla mentioned, is about the wealth transition. Because over the past 3 decades, China, I would say, we have tremendous growth of wealth. And there were many family businesses established during the time. And now most of them are facing the first time transition in terms of wealth and in terms of the family business leadership.
What kind of strategies, Camilla, have you seen families apply in the face of such change? And a little bit maybe to Karmen's point, when is the right moment for a family to say, well, you know what, let's transition from strictly looking at ourselves as a family business towards, like, a business family or an enterprising family? What is your view on that?
Yeah, so I heard a great line recently where the family decided they were a family in business because they were, having various challenges, and that really works for that particular family. And that particular family, they decided to hire an outside CEO so they could really focus on the family and the business separately, yet they were still a family in business. So for some family enterprises, that will work. For others, it won't. It depends on the situation. But for that particular business, it has worked really well and has given them the space to breathe and to allow that person with the right skills to carry the business forward with the values that they want. So that's been, something that we've seen probably more of a trend towards as well, but it's very much no one size fits all, as no one family is the same. So it'll be each for their own. But in terms of, that adaptability and fast changing environment, and what we've seen that, the very successful families, they have a very clear end goal and they know what's important. Picking out those one or two factors that are really key to nearly every decision, and that really helps them focus on being agile and quick, and does it fit with that clear end goal that they have.
For me, I see a real difference between family businesses that are probably in their first generation, where there's a real consolidation of power, decision making and control, and actually you can just make a decision around the dinner table at night effectively, to when you get to that sort of second and third generation where you probably need to have a little bit more of a formal approach to decision making to keep all the family aligned. And so I find that those family businesses that actually spend time working with the family members, aligning on values, aligning on vision, as Camilla said, really having a unified position as to what goals they want to kick, they're the ones that will do better, because when something comes and they have to pivot quickly or make a decision, they've got great clarity as to what they stand for, where they're heading, and they're happy to take a punt, because even if it's not necessarily the right one, they've all been aligned together, and so inevitably that glue will keep them together, and they'll be more resilient with that sort of long-term longevity that family businesses tend to have.
Do you actually see a stronger presence of women on the family enterprise scene? Do you see more daughters in charge? Do you see more wives getting access to wealth? What does it look like from your perspective? And how do you think it's going to influence the future of the family enterprise?
The first answer to that is definitely more, a lot more. In particular in Asia, I think the female taking the leadership role in terms of percentage of representation is a lot higher than European and American country. And that brings into a very different dynamic, right? The female leaders can actually make quick decisions, when they lead it. and yet they are not losing sight on important things. So I believe with the growing number of the women taking on the leadership, it's a positive change, right? And these stereotypes of the female family, we should avoid distinguishing, but taking advantage of that, the diversity will help bring in a slightly different skill set or perspective.
Yeah, so we definitely see more, and there's definitely a trend in upwards in that direction, which is great to see. I think what that will bring to family enterprises, the women tend to have a different leadership style just by their nature. And I think that will open up the talent pool. You know, when people see a different leadership style, others will be drawn more to that. So hopefully it'll ease the pressures on talent and bring, you know, a new way of doing business to those enterprises.
I think in Australia, for example, we only have about 20% of family businesses that have female leaders, which I don't know, I think it could be a lot higher. And so, yeah, like for all the reasons that Carmen and Camilla have said, I think it is important to, you know, I guess socialise and educate and encourage young women in family businesses early to have a voice, to step up, to not be afraid to take a leadership role, because they do bring a unique perspective and a unique skill with that sort of more holistic leadership style.
Camilla, from your perspective, do you feel like Irish family businesses or like even just European family businesses or more Western family businesses, do you feel today the systems and the cultures that they've set up are actually enabling women to come in and when they're put into those decision making roles, are they allowed to succeed in the way that they want to? Or is it still more geared towards you have to almost like emulate like a male style in order to have the impact you want?
So I think every leader brings with them their own styles, and I think as long as those women and family business leaders are confident in their own style and have the confidence that they will succeed. But I do agree, you know, there is a lot of stereotyping and unconscious bias, and passing on the business to the firstborn son. So I think as time moves on, we've seen more and more, and will hopefully increase as time goes on towards marriage-led successors in family business. So I do think, it needs to start young, as Robyn said, and, getting the opportunities, that it's equal opportunities, because no business can exist with just males or just females. There needs to be the right balance. So I think it's just allowing the opportunities across all of the younger generation to let them have the equal opportunities, and then to see, based on marriage, what comes through from that.
Carmen, for you, and again, very different cultural setting, of course, in China and in Asian culture. What do you feel are today the biggest challenges that women would encounter if they want to be part of the family enterprise and if they want to sort of like be part of its success?
I think it's the view, the perception, more than the actual barrier that I'm seeing in happening or observing in the real world now in the mainland. Traditionally, I mean, people with stereotypes what a women leadership or what women would look like when they're leading a team of people, you know. But in fact, as I mentioned earlier, I think they bring in a slightly different character, and this sort of characteristics is definitely will do good for some of the corporate culture, like being able to more consulting type of decision making process, listening, explaining the rationale. I mean, in particular for the younger generation, they like to do things with reason, with purpose. And somehow, this kind of female leadership will be able to explain that better to the workforce, the teammate, in order to drive everybody to work towards the same direction, right? It takes time for us to tell whether this is the truth, but I think in view the actual barrier is not there. It's more, the perception that we have.
Let's talk about the education requirements that you see to give the confidence to next gen leaders that they can contribute to the family legacy. In your view, like what would that look like? What should that look like?
I think for me, probably what I've seen work best with family businesses, and actually in my own career as well, as that more informal educational piece, which is really the one that I think can be quite powerful. So having women at board level in the family business sponsor junior women in the family, having senior women in the family themselves support and encourage and advocate and put forward to and make sure there's a voice for the younger women in the family, and young women in the family having that exposure to, how a board meeting might work, how negotiations take place, being taken along to big transactions and deals, really being there on the ground and having that first-hand experience, which a lot of, I guess, previously males have had. I think the important thing is, none of us on the call probably want women to be dominant in this area either. It should be more about capability, skill set, meritocracy, and who is the best fit for the role. And all I guess that women have ever wanted is just an equal opportunity to ensure that if they are the best fit, they have an equal opportunity to get the role.
Preparation have to start early, right? Parent succession would take much longer time than you think you need. And number one, usually my starting point is, do you know if your next generation is interested to come back and take up the business leadership role, right? If the answer is yes or no, it leads to a whole lot of different things happening, right? If the answer is no, okay, you got no choice, sorry. So you have to really look at a talent attraction and retention program. If the answer is yes, I'm interested to come in. Okay, think about what sort of experience and what is important for the industry that they are engaged in, right? Some of the industry require a lot of senior guys to go to market, to meet governments, to meet client or suppliers. But as the next generation, the fact is, if they're young, right? And we might need to give them the exposure that Robyn mentioned early in life, that they know this is important network for the business to be successful.
I think the next generation will need to be adaptable. They need to be willing to diversify. There's lots of things going on in the wider economic environment in terms of, businesses may need to diversify to preserve the family wealth. And the next generation will need to be brave in doing that, because if a business has been built up by the current generation, might be resistant towards change, but that change might be necessary to preserve the wealth on a long-term basis. As businesses pass down to the generations, balancing that family dynamic will become extremely important. So, leaders will need to have the strategies to help them to do that and to be mindful of that. They will need to be able to deal with uncertainties going forward.
What is your piece of advice sort of for family business members that are in their family businesses today? Is there any universal piece of advice you have for a family business member where you're like, you know what, this is what you should focus on for yourself or for your family in order to have a positive impact on its future? Karmen, maybe some wisdom from China here will be welcome.
Have an open discussion about the succession plan. That would happen at sooner or later, right? And there's no harm to start the conversation early so that everybody get prepared, got time to really discuss what's best for the family and the business. The communication within family, especially is passing on generation, is definitely have a very different dynamic as more family member has a kind of stake in the family business. How to define the success of family is important. Family business is only one part, but more importantly is the family, right? We have the legacy, the successes, maybe that define the family to the public, but at the end of the day, the family is themselves will know what is important to them, right? This communication is also very important.
Find that mentor. Having mentorship is really valuable. You rise up through and take on a leadership role, and as well finding that network that you can talk to and consult with. Being able to talk with like-minded people and people know that what your challenges and opportunities are. That's really important. So mentorship and network, I think, are huge.
I do think one of the tendencies in family businesses that I see is, because they're incredibly proud, rightly so, of the legacy of the business that's been created and the tradition and the family roots in the business, there sometimes can be a reluctance to change and to maybe adapt as much as they need to. And I think Camilla was spot on in terms of leaders of those businesses needing to have that adaptive mindset, be looking for what's coming around the corner and pivot, make agile decisions. And so in that regard, setting up those governance frameworks to, I guess, encourage that to happen and facilitate that is really important. And I guess just on the topic of today, be really encouraging to see more women at the helm of family businesses in the future, and just, I guess, the benefits that brings, and the change in leadership style that we might see.